Hi, this is Ian Eagle from CBS Sports. Wex On, Wex Off starts right now with Jason Wexler.
Hey, welcome in. It's another edition of Wex On, Wex Off. Jason Wexler with you. Anthony Piciocchi with you as well. Anthony, it's your third time co-hosting with me in 6 episodes. That almost makes you regular. I don't want you to get too comfortable, but you're doing pretty well. We'll see how you do. We'll evaluate you at the end of this episode. But something that people don't know because I haven't actually talked about it and I've been meaning to. The music that's playing under us, the bumper right now that's about to end now, is actually from your band. So tell us a little bit about that and, your passion for music, because I know you're not just a big sports guy, you're a big guitar guy.
Hey, Wex, thanks for inviting me back on. You called me, and I was really feeling the sports itch, so this is a good way to get my fix of sports today. But, like you mentioned, I'm a guitarist in a band. We're called Road to Robin. We play we play rock music. I would say it's kind of hard. It's weird to categorize your own music. But if you want to listen to our new album, it's called Boulevard Believers. You can find it on any streaming service that you may find yourself using, like the Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. It's everywhere. And which is also a little weird to say too, because it's something that we were so passionate about that we decided to make it a bedroom on a computer. And the instruments, the guitars are real, but a lot of it is just us working with a keyboard. I hope everybody enjoys it. And thanks for letting me plug that. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. Not that I wouldn't say it's not that I didn't know that you were into music before, but you did a show with your previous band. I guess what was it about a year ago, close to where we lived, and that was the first time I'd certainly heard you live. I'd heard you on Spotify or whatever medium we were listening to otherwise, and yeah, I mean, I was really impressed, and I don't think I actually know the answer to this, so I might as well ask you now. How long have you been playing guitar?
I've been playing guitar since 7th grade, so I think that puts me around like 12 years old. I took lessons for a couple of years, and then I got into high school. High school happens, puberty happens. You pick things up, you put them down. But I found my way back to the guitar after freshman year of college, and I just haven't been able to put it down since.
Was there something in your mind that was like, all right, like I really should do this again? I'm wasting a skill that I had, or was it just like, oh, this is cool, and I picked it up again, and you just started jamming?
You know what? I went. Somebody at Colgate, which is where I went to school, introduced me to John Mayer, but not just like John Mayer, like pop tunes, but like John Mayer playing the guitar live. And seeing that again, I think just like kind of re-inspired me to pick the guitar back up. I was like, wow, if John Mayer, the guy who sings sings Daughters, could play the guitar like that, I certainly can.
I noticed you said "fuck" there. It's okay. It's a podcast. We just won't say it again. It's fine.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it happens. My brother used to call into my radio show in college, and he would do that. And we talked about multiple times how he shouldn't do that. But luckily for me, the other co-host didn't mind because his brother would call in and do the same thing. So something else I want to get to, because we can talk about your band all day, but I think we'll save that for a different podcast. Because like you, I have the Sports Just tonight. Very excited to watch. Yes Network will be airing at 7:30 tonight, Game 3 of the 2002-2003 NBA Finals between at the time, New Jersey Nets and the San Antonio Spurs. We all know how that series would end. Championship for David Robinson and the first championship for Tim Duncan. So really excited to watch that at 7:30. But I'll tell you, Anthony, what bothers me about watching these old games, and I was reading an article from CBS Sports about how they're going to air a couple of older games, not really classic games, because I believe they were like 2009 and 2010 AFC Championship games or whatnot this coming weekend, and they're going to be airing a couple games from 2019. Just one of them was a Ravens Cleveland Browns game from this past year that they're going to be showing. I don't like that the article, and I don't like that the info button on the remote when you click the game tells you exactly what happens at the end of the game and why they're showing you the game. To me, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you give away the ending? Not that it didn't already happen, but I mean, I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, so would I necessarily remember, every big game, or would I necessarily have seen every big game at the time that it happened? I would say no, and to me, that's a big part of ruining the taped sports experience for me.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that if you click the info button on the remote, that it tells you the outcome of the game, and the reason why they picked it. I actually have a different view of that. But from first hearing it, I'm actually glad that they kind of explained the game. I mean, I'm not one to watch a game 3 hours after it was already played live. You know what I mean? So Don't take me as this stupid human that doesn't know the game already. Don't play it as if oh, what's going to happen? We know what happens already. I can look it up in 3 seconds.
But just because you can look it up doesn't mean that you necessarily would. I mean, I know that the Spurs eventually go on to win the series, but especially at that point, what was I, 7 years old? I mean, I don't remember what happened in that game. There was a playoff game in my memory where Jason Kidd didn't score. To be honest, I don't know that off the top of my head. I could look it up and pretend to know it all the time, but I'm not the sports talk host that's going to baffle you with this crazy memory of everything. And there are sports talk hosts out there that can do that. My memory's not the worst, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I remember every little thing. And for myself, who's worked in sports talk and worked with plenty of talented hosts, it's not like they don't do research beforehand, and they're not, not necessarily brushing up on something that they weren't quite positive about, whether something happened in 2009, 2010, just like a normal thing in life would happen. The years blend together. Sometimes the games blend together. I just don't see why these networks feel the need to ruin the game for me. I'd be much more interested in just watching it, because obviously they're showing it to me for a reason. And I might remember what happens, but I don't see the need. I don't think it helps their ratings. I mean, I'm not Nielsen, so I really can't answer that, but I don't think it helps them. It certainly makes me very annoyed that they're telling me in the description all that happens in the game, and the pivotal point and why they're showing me the game. I should just be able to trust they're showing me the game because it's an interesting game.
Well, I think it's one thing if they were displaying that information blatantly on the television as you watch the game.
They do that sometimes. MSG, no.
How many people?
MSG has done that because I was watching the some '94 Knick game with my father, and they came back from commercial break and they showed a little blurb on the screen. Game from this day, Patrick Ewing scores this many points. And Scottie Pippen does it. It's too much. Just let me watch it.
That I wasn't aware of. I mean, I haven't watched too much of the reruns of sports. I watched a few rounds of the Masters. What I've seen personally, I haven't seen it where they're actually showing, predictions. Not even predictions, just kind of telling you what happens and displaying that information on the screen. That I think is a little messed up. But in terms of it being in the info bar, which is what I've seen, I don't think that's necessarily going to affect their ratings at all. How many people are actually going to click on the info button versus just look at what game and what year it's in? I didn't. I had no idea that information was even in the info bar. So I don't even think it affects. If it's not blatantly on the screen, I don't think it's going to affect the ratings at all. But if it is, I may tend to agree with you there.
But the thing is, at least with my cable provider, when you're flipping channels, if you're on channel 32 and you go up to channel 33, it shows you the info bar and it shows you a little bit about the program, automatically. I don't know if for every television provider it does that, but for mine it does. Or, maybe I honestly just clicked it by accident, but I don't feel the need to have it spoiled for me what I already find less intriguing than obviously watching a game live. But let me ask you, have you ever, I guess you probably haven't, you said that you really haven't, and I know, you have a big NFL Sunday with your dad and your brother, and you're always watching live, but you've never taped the Islanders game or something like that and watched it a couple hours later to skip the commercials? Because I started doing that about 2 years ago with my dad, specifically with basketball, and we love it. It gives us 45 extra minutes on our night. And Andrew Gunling of your beloved Michael Kay show on the 98.7 ESPN is notorious for doing that because he goes home, he gets his fatherly duties, his husband duties done, and then he goes to watch the game on tape delay. So he's just not on Twitter. That's really all you're losing is you're not being on Twitter.
I think it would be a better viewing experience for me if I didn't have just constant ESPN notifications on my phone for the teams that I follow. So like, it's one thing I already know. Like the whole discussion we're having right now are about already knowing the outcome of these older games while you're watching them. Like I already know, and now because I'm getting updates in real time, I'm not watching the game, but I know what's going on. So I know that what the outcome of the game is. I'm less enticed to watch it. I'm less likely to watch it just because it's at that point the mystery is gone.
I hear you on that, but I mean, I would say at that point, if you knew you were going to record the game, you could disable notifications, for a certain amount of time. And I've obviously, I'm not the smartest guy. I've forgotten to do that plenty of times. I was watching the NBA postseason, and my dad and I were 45 minutes or an hour behind, in game time, and we were only in the second quarter, and the game, just ended, or whatever, because he gets home late, and we're watching late. And we finished the game, by the way, in the same amount of time. But the game could end while we're still finishing it, and I would get a notification on my phone. That part of it annoys me, but I really think you're being... Because, look, not everybody could sit down and watch every second of every game. Again, these sports talk hosts that tell you that they do that, they're lying to you, too. Again, having worked in the business, it's not like they watch every second of every game. They watch plenty, believe me, but it's not like, they're watching every second of every game because, eventually you have to go to the post office. You have to, cook dinner. You have to, whatever you have to do. I just think you're missing out on something. That's been one of my favorite tricks, I guess you could say, in the past couple of years at watching sports. I've really been able to just honestly save myself a little time watching on tape delay. And if the only thing I'm sacrificing for that is not being able to text you or one of my other friends, but I'm, focused on who I'm watching it with, or, taking that extra 45 minutes to do whatever it is I need to do, I think it's beneficial. But I don't know if I'm going to change your mind on that. I get, like, you wouldn't do that for the Super Bowl, but
You know what, Wex? If sports ever get back to normal,
you'll give it a shot. Okay, so
because at this point, even if sports come back in August and I'm still inside, I'm not going to have to record anything because I'll just be able to watch it.
If we're at a point in the first week of September, and you told people that there would be NFL football, but there'd be 20 minutes between the kickoff, the touchback, and then the first play from scrimmage, everybody would sign up for it. Everybody would sign up for sports in whatever manner. I think will come or not. That's what Dr. Anthony Fauci was saying today in an article that I read personally on CBS Sports. I'm sure it was published all over the country on ESPN and all the major news outlets as well. He said basically that if we realistically want to have sports back in the United States of America this summer, we're going to have to be okay with them being played without fans. I know this is something that we've talked about both on and off the podcast, but again, I'm still not really sure how I feel about that. I like it from the standpoint of I want sports back and I want to be able to watch sports. And I don't necessarily care that I personally wouldn't be able to go to the game because it's not like I'm going to every game anyway. 99.5% of the games anyway, I'm watching on television. So I don't care. And football, by the way, I actually prefer to watch it on television. But to me, if it's not safe enough to have this large gathering of people like we're normally used to seeing, 20,000, 40,000, whatever, 100,000 people in terms of college football audiences, spectators, are concerned, then how could you say it's safe for the players? Because if we're saying that you shouldn't gather in groups larger than 10, let's take a baseball game, for example, that's 50 players right there. That's, 5 coaches at least on each side. There's 4 umpires. There's the sideline reporter. There's, the ground crew people that would be somewhere in the vicinity. That's obviously more than 10 people. So if you can't say that it's safe for the majority to gather in large crowds. And again, maybe the number will change from, it's okay to have gatherings of 50 people, but at that point, what's the difference between 50 people and 30,000 people? Obviously, it's a lot, but like, where would you draw that line? I just don't think, if we're not ready to have sports back with fans in the arena, we shouldn't play because it's not safe enough for the athletes.
Well, the difference there, Wex, is that the larger the gatherings larger of 10 are based upon conditions of our everyday lives and how we live. We can't control certain things. But in what Dr. Fauci was saying, he laid out specific parameters to make it potentially possible. I mean, he's talking about tests every week for all the athletes and I guess the personnel that would be involved. He's talking about teams and organizations having to be quarantined in hotels and surveilled. And I think those are the parameters. I don't think it's necessarily to the players or some of them at least that they wouldn't be able to play in front of fans. I think it's also the conditions that they would need to live by. I mean, you're talking about being watched all the time and separated from your family in most instances. Like it's not something that the players may necessarily want to deal with for a length of time just to play football or just to play whatever sport that they'd rather play. So I mean, I think in the world or in the scenario that Dr. Fauci presented, it could be possible to have these games and to actually play them in a safe manner.
But should that even be an option? Why not wait to work completely out of?
I'd love to see it. As an everyday fan, like I'm not a rich man. I can't afford to go to every Patriot game I want to go see or every Islander game that I want to go see. I consume most of my sports on television to begin with.
I mean,
like as the everyday fan, I would say, yeah, of course, bring sports back as quickly as possible. Because if I'm going to be stuck inside, because the way we have to conduct ourselves as just normal citizens is we have to abide by the no larger than 10 rule. But as a human, I would respect the choices and the feelings of the players, and if they would want to come back. But in an ideal world, as a fan, yeah, give me sports.
And I hear that, and obviously, there's however many players in the National Football League, however many players in the National Basketball League, hundreds and hundreds of players, and obviously they're all different people. They all come from different walks of life. I don't know if I was talking to you specifically about this point, but obviously people forget that, LeBron James is a person. Lamar Jackson's a person. They're not, they're not just athletes. They're people with families and lives and opinions and thoughts, and certain people would have different opinions. Certain athletes will have different opinions on whether they'd want to play, without fans, So I don't know if there's ever going to be a day that everybody would agree on it. But I think, again, if we're just looking out for the welfare, because I hear what you're saying is that the sports nut, I agree with you. I want any sports back. But I wouldn't feel too happy about it if we're playing where there's nobody in these stadiums, in these ballparks, in these football stadiums. Yeah, God forbid if basketball came back, but I don't think it's going to this year. Where I'd necessarily feel good about other human beings having to, get back to work in large social gatherings and groups when it's, not safe for the rest of the world to. I guess, I'd be okay with it if, I'm picking an arbitrary date here, but if we decided, baseball was going to start on July 4th, right? And then they'd start allowing fans in, in August, I'd be okay with something like that. But if they started up with the whole notion of, we're going to play the whole season without fans, then I think you really have to sit back and say, wait, are we looking out for these players' best interests? And obviously, player A and player B have different best interests, especially in the NFL when the average career is 3 years or less. It's going to affect a guy on the end of a roster more, and he's going to want to play because it could be, his only shot, and you're only good for so long. So guys are going to have different opinions on it, but I think, stepping back from the sports scope, just, being somebody that generally just wants to see everybody be safe, I don't think that we should play sports. We should have professional sports back in this country if we can't have these large gatherings, if we're still too worried about the coronavirus spreading.
I see your point. Like a lot of the spectacle.
Don't get me wrong. I'm really bored. Don't get me wrong. But
but I hear you. Like these these athletes, like you said, like they tend to get dehumanized when they are still human beings. And maybe the solution is, the happy medium is sports come back in June and they're played by these parameters and there's no fans, but the athletes get to decide whether or not they want to participate. Like maybe it's something like that. I don't know, but I hear and understand your sentiment about should sports even be played if we're not allowed to gather and have that environment. That's really what I think draws sports to people, or people to sports, is that like the electric environment and playing in front of those fans and feeling the roar of the crowd in the arena and knowing that you're playing for those people in the crowd. So I understand.
All right, so we could talk about this forever, and obviously every show is going to be somewhat Corona involved because that's the world we're living in. But I promised you we'd talk a little New England Patriots. So as you know, there is for the first time I guess technically for the first time in 2 years, depending on what you thought about Jacoby Brissett and how good you thought that oh my goodness. The Jimmy Garoppolo, was going to be when they were backing up Brady. But for the first time in a really long time, obviously with Tom Brady having gone to Tampa Bay for the next couple of years and probably to end his career there's a quarterback controversy in New England, and we've seen both sides of it. I think Patriots fans, and I know you're Patriots fans, have plenty of different opinions on it. Would you rather see Jarrett Stidham, or would you rather see the veteran Brian Hoyer under center for your New England Patriots in 2020? Maybe it's 2022, whatever the year will be.
Personally, I would like to see Jarrett Stidham under center for the start of next season. But what is going to happen, and if Bill Belichick comes out to the media and says that there is going to be a quarterback not controversy, a quarterback competition for the starting job, that tells me one of two things. One, whoever wins that competition out of the preseason will start. And two, that competition will last the entire season. So whoever starts under center is not necessarily going to be the person who finishes the season under center. But for me, I would like to see Jarrett Stidham under center for a few reasons. One, you bring in Brian Hoyer. He knows the offense. He is obviously going to mentor the next quarterback. He's not going to be your future. He's not going to be your future. He's not going to be someone that you expect to start for any length of time or any lengthy period of time. So you drafted Jarrett Stidham. I feel personally that you should see what you have, because if you are somehow sitting, if Tom Brady was our Joe Montana and you're somehow sitting on Steve Young, you gotta give him a shot. So he hasn't played poorly in the preseason from what I've seen, or the last year's preseason. His like couple of snaps in the center in the regular season weren't too good, but I mean, hey, he was a rookie who was thrown into a game, and I just feel like you have to figure out what you have right now, because I even personally believe, and we can get into this debate, I don't think the Patriots should draft a quarterback in the first round this year. I think there are plenty of other holes that they can fix.
Oh, I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback this year.
And I think they will commit to one of those two quarterbacks starting, but I feel like they should commit to Jarrett Stidham. See what you have, because and like you sent me that clip today from, I think it was the Herd.
Nope.
Am I correct with the Herd?
No, it was the Huddle on 101.3 The Game in Burlington, Plattsburgh, with my buddies Arnie Spanier, Brady Farkas, and Rich Haskell, the station that I used to work with. You can catch them 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern every day. They do a great job, and honestly, they were breaking down Bill Belichick's Monday comments to the media about how Brady was leaving was water under the bridge, and they were just focused on moving forward. And one of the things they were bringing up in that discussion, and I'm going to ask it to you too, would you rather have the Patriots go this year, again, assuming they don't draft a quarterback this year, would you rather have them go 6-10 with Jarrett Stidham, or 9-7 with Brian Hoyer, and get that elusive, now created 7th playoff seed in the AFC?
Neither of those situations are appealing to me.
Well, that's because you're spoiled. You have to pick one.
I know. But if I had to choose, I would choose to go 6-10 with Jarrett Stidham. And for a lot of the reasons why that were mentioned on that clip that you sent to me, and you like how I was able to set you up with that plug. But
well, you didn't. You got it wrong. You said it was the herd.
It was a setup. I set you up to correct me and correctly plug the show. It was a setup.
Okay.
I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm a little creative. But anyway, for many reasons. One, I'd rather, if Jarrett Stidham is a bust, I'd rather, knowing that Trevor Lawrence is going to be in the next draft, I'd rather have a shot at a decent draft pick to not only if a good quarterback is available at the whatever that pick may be, 6, 7, 8 picks, you pick him, or you have higher draft capital to move up to get the guy that you want. Because Brian Hoyer is not the man that you want to depend your future on. He's not the guy you're trying to build around. If anything, he's going to mentor whoever that next guy is going to be, whether that's Jarrett Stidham or somebody else. I still think that it's possible. Bill Belichick looks at Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer in the offseason. None of these players are good enough to start for my team, and he can go sign one of like an Andy Dalton or a Cam Newton or somebody who's still available, pending being able to get physicals. In the case of Cam Newton, but I still think that's a possibility because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what any Patriots fan thinks. Bill Belichick's going to do what's best for the team to win.
Okay, let me ask you: if you could sign up for Cam Newton being your quarterback in 2020, would you do it?
Yes. Because I also agree with what was said on that show. I don't want to have a losing season next year. I've been spoiled my entire life. I would like to make it to the playoffs, but if you were giving me those two scenarios, I'd rather lose with Jarrett Stidham than win with Brian Hoyer.
And the example Brady Farkas used, again referring to the clip of the huddle on 101.3 The Game in Burlington, Vermont, and Plattsburgh, New York. Burlington and Plattsburgh's home for sports. Again, Brady Farkas, his example was, would you rather have the Patriots lose 37-17 with Brian Hoyer under center in the first week of the postseason after they got there at 9-7 and got that newly created 7th seed in the AFC, or would you rather have them go 6-10 and truly see what they have out of Jarrett Stidham? Now, I think you obviously wouldn't sign up for any team going 6-10 because it puts you in the middle, for that next year of drafting, and you'd obviously rather go, 2-14 or what at that point maybe would be 2-15. But I think if you went 6-10 and you went with Jarrett Stidham, you could be upset that you went 6-10, but you shouldn't have been upset with your decision because I think you made the right decision in seeing what the guy has. I mean, they drafted him for a reason. They like something about him. I think you got to give him a shot unless you really think that, you messed up. And Bill Belichick, I don't think he's too proud to admit that he messed up. He's not going to come out and say publicly, that, I messed up with this kid or whatnot, or I'm not sure what I'm going to do. You're never going to hear him say much to the media, but he'd be the first person to, if he made a mistake, move on from it because he trusts his instincts, but I think he's just someone who's always constantly thinking, constantly trying to work pieces of the puzzle in, and he'd probably be one of the first to tell you that he's made mistakes. I don't think you're going to get that answer out of him easily, but if you had him behind closed doors, I'm sure he'd admit that to you and admit there's been times when he has been wrong or his, first inkling wasn't always correct. I just think he's so good at, one, that this New England system, this New England culture that has made them so successful throughout our lifetime, a system that made them successful with Matt Castle under center the year Brady got injured, a system that's made them, these Super Bowl dynasty that we know today because he's just so with it, honestly. He's so willing to adapt and willing to look at things differently and not think, too much or overthink. He's just really intelligent when it comes down to it. He's probably the best ever to do it.
And you're absolutely right. Bill Belichick won't be the one to admit that he made a mistake with drafting
Publicly.
Jared Stidham. He would never admit it publicly. But the other flip side of the coin is, even when Bill Belichick makes a mistake, there's low risk involved with it. I mean, he spent a 4th round draft pick on Jared Stidham. It felt like he spent the 1st round draft pick, a high value pick on him. So even when he does make mistakes, it's low cost, it's low risk, which is one of my favorite things about him. But the other side of this, and you kind of touched on it, with seeing what you have with Jared Stidham. As a fan, you're looking at all these teams around you, and close to you too, like specifically in division with the Jets and the Bills, and soon to be the Dolphins. And then if you look at the Cleveland Browns and the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens, who are all starting their futures with their franchise quarterbacks, presumably. And it is a little. And if the Patriots do decide to go down this road of seeing what they have in Jared Stidham, it would be a little comforting to me as a fan knowing that we're not just patching a Band-Aid on this. We're trying to start rebuilding from the ground up so that we can become the dynasty that we were, and we still. Well, I mean, we're not really that dynasty anymore. I think that dynasty is over. But I mean, the glory years that we always hope to relive the glory years.
Well, here's the thing about it, and this is my main point. I think if you're a Patriots fan and they went 6-10 with Jared Stidham, I think you got to look at it as you invested a year and you tried. It's not always going to work out. It'll be easy to say at the end of the season, if they finish 6-10 with Jared Stidham under center, that they should have gone with Brian Hoyer and they would have been 9-7 and they would have made the postseason. But I think if the Patriots make that decision, the most important thing you said, and you're absolutely right, is it's going to be a quarterback competition all year long. I can't imagine that Jared Stidham or Brian Hoyer is going to have this Russell Wilson-like training camp that all of a sudden is going to make them the guy, without a doubt, that through 16 games is going to undoubtedly be the starter every game. You know, I think if Hoyer won the job, because they really didn't have confidence in Stidham, but Hoyer was stinking it up, and all of a sudden they're 1-3, and they got blown out really badly, something like that. Belichick might just go with Stidham and see what he's got. I mean, it could just be a case of the guy needing reps. And I'm not going to sit here and, Mel Kiper it and go through, the ups and downs of Jared Stidham, because I don't really know. But I know enough about that you should take a chance on a guy if you think there's, even a possibility that you could be right. And Bill Belichick has pretty good instincts. I mean, he drafted plenty of winners before. He's gotten plenty of guys that didn't fit in necessarily with other teams. He's gotten guys that have been distractions in other locker rooms that have been able to acclimate themselves and, kind of get in line with the Patriot way, all for the sake of winning. Guys that have taken some pay cuts because they want to be a part of that New England culture that Bill Belichick and Kraft have built. So it'd be easy to say that you shouldn't want to be 6-10 with Jared Stidham, but isn't it kind of worth it to find out?
I agree with you. And at the end of the day, Patriots fans, and myself included, will come to that conclusion if we're 6-10 and Jared Stidham is a bust at the end of next season, we'll inevitably at the end of the day find ourselves feeling like we tried. We made the effort to see what we have, and that was the smart decision for our football team. I think just the immediate reaction is going to be, wow, the Patriots were 6-10. And if you're me, I've never seen that in my life. I've never seen a Patriots losing season in my life, and that is something I'm blessed to say, but I'm also now going to be cursed if we don't ever get to that level of success again, and it probably won't, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. But just going 6-10 because I was so spoiled in my football fandom that I followed.
And look, I get, and we touched on it already. I get why specifically 6-10 would be, obviously way worse than 9-7, because if you make the playoffs, you could possibly win the Super Bowl. Obviously, shout out to my Giants both times. But the other side of the coin is that if you went 6-10, at least you gave Jared Stidham a shot, and you could go 6-10, and Jared Stidham could start, I don't know, 9 games, and all of a sudden they give it to Brian Hoyer to try to salvage a playoff spot. But I wouldn't necessarily be upset with, that they gave a guy a shot that, Bill Belichick maybe thought had something there. I don't think he's going to put a guy out there that he's not that confident in to be their starter. I think Bill Belichick's a guy that can really evaluate talent, and if he thinks that there's even a chance that this guy can be good, Jared Stidham, then I'll be okay with the Patriots fan if I'm a Patriots fan with Bill Belichick putting him out there, because you got to trust Bill at this point. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and Bill we trust. That's the motto I've been praying on since Tom Brady left. But I agree. I really do need to see as a Patriots fan. I'd be upset if we don't get to see what Jared Stidham inevitably is. And I'm just hoping for the best. I hope that we have our Steve Young. I hope that we have that Aaron Rodgers after Brett Favre. I hope that we have the Pat Mahomes after Alex Smith. I'm praying because there's nothing worse. And
wait, who did you say? Who did you say before that? You said Rodgers after Favre, and who did you say before that?
Pat Mahomes after Alex Smith.
No. You said that after that. Who'd you say before Favre and Rodgers?
Oh, Steve Young wow, Montana.
That's fine. I was going to say one of those comparisons really doesn't fly. Alex Smith clearly it was the right decision to move on from him because he was a game manager, and Patrick Mahomes is all world.
Right, and I'm hoping that it was the right decision to move on from Tom Brady because we're sitting on a gold mine.
I mean, there's no way Patriots fan.
I really hope that Jared Stidham turns out to be the level of Pat Mahomes.
I mean, it definitely could happen. It definitely could happen.
I don't think it was that bad of a comparison. I really hope so.
No. My point was, you talked about going from one great quarterback like seamlessly into another. I don't think that the Alex Smith, Pat Mahomes analogy is on par with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and Steve Young and Joe Montana. That was only my point because I heard those and I was like, wait a minute.
That's fine. I wasn't necessarily going for one great quarterback after another. I was just more going for moving on from a quarterback to a great one.
Like Eli Manning to Daniel Jones? No, I'm just kidding. All right, so in the paraphrased words of the New England Patriots, we're on to Cincinnati, but we don't actually want to talk about them. So how about we're on to this before we close it out here on Wex On, Wex Off. Again, going a little bit over our normal time, try to keep this usually to about a half hour, but I think it's really important to get to this, that it's the 73rd anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier with the Brooklyn Dodgers. We obviously know the impact that Jackie Robinson had on the game of baseball, on so many African-American players that play now, whether it's in baseball or other sports. I don't know if I'd actually seen this quote before. I probably had, but I hadn't necessarily remembered it until I saw it today. So I'll read this and we'll end on this because I think it's, the most important part of, what Jackie Robinson did for not only baseball, but for society. So he's quoted as saying, excuse me. See, in real radio, Anthony, we would have had a cough button. You never would have heard that, but I'm not even going to edit that out. It happens. All right, so Jackie Robinson quoted with saying, "A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. I'm not concerned with your liking or disliking me. All I ask is that you respect me as a human being." I think that's just so important and something that we should keep in mind, that whether you have differences of opinions, different ethnicity, different race, different political opinions with somebody, just treat them as respect because they're a human being. I don't think it's something we necessarily need to be reminded more of during quarantine, but it's, a good reminder in general. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Lex.
All right, so what are you going to be watching tonight? I watched an episode of Tiger King yesterday. I'm not going to have time to get to that tonight. But what do you
Tonight, I think I'm actually re-binging the series Dexter. So
isn't that like 7 seasons?
Right now. Yeah, so I figured I'd pick something long because I don't know when this is going to end.
Well, right, but there's so many great things you could watch out there. You could watch All American.
I could do that, but I also, I watched Dexter Dexter, and I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but a lot of people could agree that the ending to that series was awful. So I'm hoping, after stepping away from it for a while and coming back to it, and this is my
You think that it's only kind of terrible coming back?
Exactly. I hope it aged over time, but we'll see.
Well,
that was my main reason for restarting Dexter.
You're restarting a 7-season television series because you want to see the ending?
Yeah, I want to relive the whole thing. I do that.
All right. You want to relive the whole thing. That's a little different. All right. Listen, I'm just busting your chops. You could have said whatever. I would have had a stupid reaction to it. Anyway, he's Anthony. I'm Jason. This has been Wex On, Wex Off. Thank you for listening.